I really appreciate it.
There you go. Okay, it's recording.
Oh, well, thank you. All right.
All right, so we were saying, okay, so in terms of other research, the research that I have done, again, has primarily been in the hospital setting. So my doctoral research, for example, was about how we can include patients and families into their care. So, specifically when they're in the hospital, right? Because what we want to be able to do in the hospital is coordinate the care of all of these people. You've got, the doctors and the nurses and the physical therapists and everybody. And there's no one place in the medical record where all of that information exists as a quote patient care plan, right? Every discipline has a care plan, but the patient doesn't have one. So, long time ago, 30 years ago, when I first started in nursing, it was expected that it was the nurse's responsibility to be that care coordinator, right? Like, so I would be like the gatekeeper. The dietitian would come, the neurologist would come, anybody that would come to see that patient had to talk to me because I had a paper chart in my hand that they had to be able to see. So now, with the advent of electronic health records, that's really gone out the window, and there is no gatekeeper anymore. So, and we've seen obviously serious safety events increase as a risk. So what we proposed was, okay, let's have the nurses, while they are doing bedside handoff, they were already in this organization doing bedside handoff, meeting together at the bedside to do shift report. We said, let's include the patient and the family in that process and give them a care plan that lives at the bedside that they can update every time the nurses come around on a change of shift to do bedside handoff. So the problem is the nurses didn't want to be involved in that. They perceived that as additional work, and they said, we're just too busy. So we also incorporated what we call the MISCARE survey, MISSCARE, the MISCARE survey, because there is a growing body of evidence that the nurses can't do everything that they need to be able to do because they just have plain too many tasks. And it's just not possible to get it all done in the day. So what ends up happening is, since there's, 17 hours worth of work to be done in a 12-hour shift, they all pick and choose what it is that they're going to focus on today. So maybe one nurse might say, you know what, I'm not going to turn the patient today, which puts them at risk for pressure ulcers. Maybe another person, says, I'm going to eliminate this medication because it's not an important medication. It's not a big deal if he misses it. Somebody else might say, I'm not going to get the patient up and walk him today because it's not important, or mouth care, or any other number of things that, that nurses would omit from the day. So, and so what we found during this process, sorry about that. What we found during this process was we surveyed the nurses before this scenario. They said, I don't have time to plan care. I don't have time to do any of these other things. And then we implemented the patient and the family being involved, thinking if somebody else could kind of play that role of coordinator instead of the nurse, would they then have more time to do all of the things that they need to do? And it turned out that that intervention made no difference. It significantly improved patient satisfaction scores. Patients and families were much happier being involved in the plan of care, but nurses said both before and after, I don't have time to do stuff. I don't have time to do it. I don't have time to talk to them. I don't, and what ended up coming out in the end was they don't know the plan themselves. So they were very uncomfortable talking to patient families about the plan of care because they weren't really clear on it because nobody was talking to them. Again, the days of let's all stand here at the nurse's station and discuss Mr. Jones's care are over because the nurses are running around like chickens with their heads cut off just trying to get everything done, and the doctors are running in and out and maybe even running up the back stairwell, sliding in to see the patient, going back down the stairwell. Nobody even knows he was here, and then he goes home to chart in the electronic health record, and nobody ever even sees it. So that's what we found. The intervention didn't work, but at least we gained a lot of other knowledge about the challenges that are happening in the healthcare system.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's probably the biggest body of research that I've done is on patient and family-centered care and care coordination in the hospital setting.
Wow. That's amazing. It just kind of proves how hard working nurses are and how they need way more resources than they're receiving. And
Yes, exactly.
really, really interesting. My dad's actually an RN, so
Oh, okay, great. So yeah, so you can talk to him and say, hey, does this ring true? And it's interesting because this miscare survey now has been around for about 10 years or 12 years now in the literature. It's been applied in so many different areas, even internationally. And everywhere you go, it's the same story. The things that nurses aren't doing are the same. The things that they are doing are those things that they're prompted to do by the medical record. If it's not a prompt in the medical record, then there's a good chance it's not going to get done. And those things that are conceptual, like planning care, that aren't a specific task, those are, definitely falling by the wayside.
yeah. So it's the importance of having records really benefits the patient.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And again, involving them in the care, right?
Mhm.
If the patient doesn't know that they're supposed to be seen by the dietitian and the dietitian doesn't show up, the patient isn't going to question it. But if the nurse says to the patient at the beginning of the day, hey, Mr. Jones, today you need to walk 3 times, you need to go down to radiology for this test, and you need to be seen by the dietitian. If these things don't happen, you need to let me know because we need to make sure it happens today. And then at the end of the day, when they're doing that bedside handoff, there should be a conversation. Hey, Mr. Jones, how'd this go? You were supposed to do all of these things today. Did all of these things get done? How do you feel about that? What went well? What didn't go well? What do we need to do differently tomorrow? And so, that's not an unreasonable conversation to have with a patient and their family. It's just not part of our routine care. And we need to change the way we deliver care so that we can incorporate the patients and families as equal partners.
Yeah. And did this research prompt you into wanting to work for preventing medical errors, like you do now with your company?
No, I think this started for me a long time ago. In 1997, when I was a critical care nurse, I thought we had the best healthcare system in the world until my late husband was a patient, and he was diagnosed with cancer and had a bone marrow transplant. And for 3.5 years, I was on the other side of the bed, and I went, "Oh my God, I had no idea." And so then, what prompted me then to, that's what prompted me to get involved in this. And so I moved into administration and away from the bedside in 2002. He passed away in 2001. And so I, moved into healthcare administration thinking, all right, I'm going to help fix this. We're going to fix this problem. And, for the next 13 years, I really thought that we were making headway. And, and of course, my leadership career grew alongside the patient safety movement, not our organization, but the movement as a whole, because, that really took off in 2000, it started in 1999 when the Institute of Medicine released the 2 Errors Human report. But in 2001, they followed that up with another document called Crossing the Quality Chasm, which was like, okay, so now we know that we have these medical errors. How do we fix that? And that became a roadmap for us. And I followed that roadmap and every other roadmap that came out from the IHI and the IOM and everybody after that. And we really thought that we were doing great things. And, in the meantime, my kids grew up, I got married again. And then my second husband was a patient in the hospital where I was a chief nursing officer and the site administrator and responsible for clinical practice for the entire system. And all of a sudden here I am on the other side of the bed again going, you've got to be kidding me. How have we not fixed this yet? How is it that we have all of these numbers that we're measuring all of the time, and I can show you my leapfrog grades and how good they are, and yet we're still not coordinating care and we're not talking to each other? So, that is really what led me to, because I at the same time, I was literally within weeks of him being in the hospital starting my doctoral work. And so I initially thought I was going to be doing something on nursing staffing for my research, and this experience changed that. And I was like, nope, nope, patient-centered care and care coordination is what I really want to study. And so, I think everything since then, everything that I've done since then has been more because of my personal experiences than anything professionally that I have done. And I'm just very, very passionate that I don't want to do this again. I'm over it. I mean, I don't want to be on the other side of the bed with any other family members, hoping to God that I can catch any errors that fall through the cracks. And I tell people all the time, I have, two husbands who both could have died. So sorry about that. I have two husbands that both of them would have died from a medical error had I not been there to intervene.
Wow.
So, it just petrifies me that it's going to be somebody else that I love who I'm not going to be there for to catch the errors when they fall through the cracks. So that's pretty much what makes me do this work.
Wow. I'm so sorry for your loss, but that is such a fascinating, firsthand knowledge of you witnessing this, and luckily you're so knowledgeable about what's happening and around you that you were able to save people yourself in those circumstances.
Yeah. And I mean, the only reason why we don't have more deaths and harm from medical error is because we do have a lot of amazing healthcare heroes out there every day that are saving people, and they're preventing people from falling through the cracks. And when I talk to those clinicians about medical error, their response is, my practice is safe. I do great things. I save people all the time. What are you talking about? And my response to them is, there shouldn't even be any cracks that you're saving them from in the first place. That's the problem. It's not independent practice. It's not individual people that are causing harm. It is the fragmented system that we have and the poor coordination and communication across that system that is leading to most of the errors that occur.
Right. That's amazing. I have a couple more questions for you. What specifically do you think that focusing on community-centered care and research, what do you think benefit could that have? Maybe focusing on getting to the community before they get sick, or while they're sick and in treatment, speaking with them and giving them education on how to help themselves. What benefits do you think that would have?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we need to change the mindset. So, medicine is very paternalistic. It has been for a really long time, but centuries ago, right? For thousands of years, it was the family who took care of those who were sick, right? Mm-hmm. And it really wasn't until the late 1800s that we started putting these people in buildings and calling them hospitals and saying, you stay there, and family you keep out, And so we have to go back to that mindset of, care begins long before you get diagnosed, long before you get sick. How do we prevent people from getting sick in the first place? How do we get people to own their own health care and to own their own wellness? Because they really don't understand the risks involved. People think, oh, big deal. If I get sick, they'll give me a pill. It'll make me better. Everything will be fine. Mm-hmm. And that's A, not true, and B, fraught with all kinds of potential errors that could occur in the process. So not only do we need clinicians to let patients and families in as equal partners in care, we need patients and families to see themselves as those equal partners in care. And I remember when I started nursing school, again, long time ago, long. It was 1985 that I started nursing school. So, and my grandmother at the time was one of those people that did everything that her doctor told her. So, from the time I started until the time I finished nursing school, I convinced her